Is it on?
Yes.
Are you connected?
Yep.
Good morning.
Hi.
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good. How would you like to start this morning?
Well, I mean, you guys had a meeting, I guess, on July 8th about those 6 placements on the salary schedule, so we can start there, or if you guys have a response to any of the multiple articles you had that we gave you, we'll take that.
Okay.
I don't know that we have a preference of where exactly to start.
Okay. We did have a meeting on the 8th. Regarding those employees, we feel like we've got a game plan for moving forward. And how we're going to address it and what we feel like is most appropriate, regarding their placement, not placement, and salaries moving forward.
So they're placed on the salary schedule for their base?
And they're not. And I really feel like at this point, the conversation probably needs to move offline.
I mean, I don't
It's
disagree,
a
but
small
we started
amount
the
of
conversation
employees, and
in October and November, and we're still here, so I guess.
I
that's where
understand
I'm
that.
At, like, we did have the conversation offline and it still didn't get solved.
I understand that the timeline has taken longer than you would have wished, but we are working on it.
Okay.
I was wondering if you had reviewed the language cleanup document and if that was something that we could work on.
So we had talked about removing the individual class prep from page 7 from Article 2, and that looks like it didn't get removed. I also noted a bunch of places that when the article continues to another page, we had talked about that numbering that is either incorrect or not there.
Okay.
On page 26, we had moved the principal approval and the 4 and 5 basically had moved up under the flex hours thing, but I thought we had agreed to change principal to building administrator. And that looks like it didn't get changed. In all words, just needing to be labeled. And then I didn't know if we wanted to do the labeling also in the appendix. Something, I didn't know, we didn't actually talk about that. Because like appendix B is like, but it's not labeled appendix B on every, so I didn't know if we were continuing that into the appendix. Like we did with the articles or not, the labeling at the bottom of the page. But that's it, so I went. And you're welcome to have this. Yeah. Everyone that's turned sideways is a page that has something.
Your Article 31 proposal regarding the counselors. I think that this is something that we are potentially interested in doing, but I'm concerned that the wording as it currently is this really what staff wanted? When looking at licensure of our staff, the licensed clinical professional counselor, I'm not sure that that applies. So I just wanted to be sure before we agreed to something that this is what was really wanted. Because sure, we could say yes, but I think that we should just double check that.
What do you think it should be?
There's a difference between licensed clinical professional counselor and licensed professional counselor.
Okay, I mean, I'll double check with them. They're the ones who wrote the language, so my understanding was it's the LCPC to
I'm just
have the
not sure.
equivalent graduate hours that would be similar to the LSCSWs. So, but I will double check that.
And we're, I think, in agreement that the licensed clinical professional counselor, that those are comparable. But there is a difference between those two.
Okay.
Do you have responses on our Appendix B or Article 31?
I mean, I think our stance on Appendix B is we would like to put all of them in. So we didn't feel like in reviewing them that they like the wording is not, I understand that it's in my brain, it makes sense that it aligns with the levels of the framework model, but they're, I mean, they're not the same. So we would like to put them back, put them all in. If those are the evaluation tools that are being used, then we should include them all.
And since we found out that the links are not always live, they should have a place to be able to go. Any employee should be able to find their evaluation somewhere, and if it's in our contract. So, I mean, and a live link can change without us knowing too. So a hard copy, everybody at least has the original. And that a link can't change. If that makes sense.
It does. I understand the need to have access and have that readily available, and that's something that we will ensure is corrected on the website. We're having to remake them into a format that can go on the website. Article 31.
We pulled what of the bargaining unit that we could make contact with. And generally speaking, the overwhelming sentiment was that they would like a response on compensation and some other items before they make a decision really about whether they're gonna accept this or not, was basically what we heard.
We do have a response to your Article 36 proposal.
So I'm Dustin Greenway, does it now, sorry, so Mr. Minky left. They asked that I join the team. So in regard to that, for the most part, the determination of the amount of coaches is made based off of, so there, every athletic director submits the numbers of participation each year to Debbie Ashmore over here at Hummer. She collects that information for the start of each season and the end of the season, how much they started, how many they started with, how many they ended with, in all sports. She provides that to me, at the end of the year, and then we go through the ratios, on the allocation sheet that we've used for a long time for that. I was not aware that this had been an issue. I had one athletic director, I think it was the April 27th PD day. The middle school and high school athletic directors got together to have a meeting about some things. I attended that at the beginning just to check in with them and have a little conversation about how things are going. One athletic director mentioned some of this, but nobody else really had much to say about it. And I've not heard from any principal about this. I did tell them I would look into it as we do allocations this year. And that they have enough people to cover the things that they're doing, but this was really a new thing to me. And even at that meeting, only one of the 6 of the middle school folks even mentioned anything about it. The rest of them really didn't have anything to say or any complaint about it.
So I don't want to speak for my athletic coordinator or activities coordinator, excuse me. But she has said that she has spoken to you about the numbers that are allocated don't really match what coaches would actually use for a team. So I think, no, I don't even want to say the numbers, but the numbers that are given for one coach is not how many they would actually carry. That number is much smaller. So then those extras of those kids are pushed to the other team. Well, if you don't have another team to push from JV to B team because you don't have 3 coaches, you're either making a very, very large JV team, or you are having a JV and a varsity being coached by one person and the B team is going to another site coaching. So that's why the middle school coaches really think it's imperative that we have, if we have 3 teams, we have 3 coaches. Regardless of the breakout of numbers. If that makes sense.
I understand that.
Okay.
That it just isn't something that's part of this process. And so I'm looking into that. I will address those things as we do coaching allocations, but we don't really negotiate the number of coaches.
Okay.
And so,
I mean, right, we don't negotiate the number of coaches, but we absolutely negotiate the compensation of those coaches. So I think from our perspective, I don't know if you watched the videos from last sessions, but we erred on the side of preserving safety over, because the other option was that we asked for those coaches that are coaching multiple teams that wants to have an additional addenda, because they are doing more work than just what, you know, if Landon has, for example, has a varsity JV and a B team coach, and the coach at, I don't know, French is doing varsity and JV, and then you have one doing B team, like that one coach is doing more work than the other ones for the same amount of money. So, but we felt like what we really wanted to focus on was the safety aspect of having that additional, I mean, really, that's what it's about, right? Is we want the adult there, watch the kids.
I
And make
don't
sure everything's
disagree
safe.
with you about any of that.
So I mean,
In the way that there's one athletic director that mentioned it that day, nobody else, including yours, mentioned that at that time.
Well, maybe
And-
not that particular time, but
And that discussion hasn't been around, I have 3 teams and only 2 coaches. I've never had that discussion.
well, you and I had that discussion after morale committee.
We have,
Yeah,
yeah.
okay. So it sounds to me like this is something you guys are not interested in putting in the contract, but you are looking at fixing in other ways.
Mhm.
Okay. Just making sure we're all clear.
All right, we also have a response to your Article 25.
So at this time, the calendar has been set. Calendars have been printed I don't think this is something we are interested in looking at for this year. However, I do think it is a topic of discussion for the academic calendar committee that meets in starting September. And something that we can notice for next year's conversation. And if the concern is around, because I know one of the concerns at the end of the year was around the 4 days and people with addendums and having to work, be off and then work, come back. I think those are things that, again, the academic calendar committee can take a look at and see, and if needed, can reconvene right after or right before spring break, and we can look at how we address the end of the year. But right now, it's late in the game to change the calendar for next year.
But to be fair, if we negotiate at the same time every year, wouldn't that be the answer then every year instead it's too late?
Not, I don't think, if the academic calendar committee studies that, talks about it, and discusses it during the creation of next year's calendar, and we look at that as we're moving forward and create a calendar that has those considerations in place.
And potentially, I think the outcome of all of that is perhaps we both notice that article going into next year.
It's
I don't-
not, I don't think it's something that we oppose talking about for a future calendar.
Right, I just want to make sure, I guess I want to make sure in my head that the way I would interpret that is then that we are potentially asking the bargaining unit and the board to then vote on a calendar that's not in accordance with what's negotiated in the professional agreement. Because we would potentially be introducing a calendar to them with less days, less instructional days, less duty days on it. And then if that's the calendar that passes, I don't know that we can pass that. Does that make sense?
Well, I think there are ways in which we can look at the calendar, where we can create a calendar that then adjusts to was it 186 days? I think we can look at the calendar where that can be noticed in the voting, like this is what it looks like if it's 190 days, and this is how it would shift if it's 186 days.
Or potentially 188 days. Whatever it would be.
I think we're more aligned on this issue, and maybe it seems we agree that we want to work on that too. There needs to be a process and to give our students, families time to adjust, staff to adjust. And if we were to, through committee work, make some decisions for the next calendar, that can always be worked out with an MOU or some sort of agreement with the bargaining unit.
I mean, as the person who has to organize the vote around an MOU, it's not as easy as it sounds, but. I mean, so yeah, I mean, sure, we can, but it's a whole nother ratification vote after all the lawyers have legalized the language and made sure that we've swapped it 5 times back and forth and everybody's agreed to every period and comma and number and whatever. So it's not as easy as, I mean, I do a full ratification vote every year for all of this. So I guess my thing would be if we're more aligned than not aligned potentially in that, then and our calendar already affords for us to potentially have extra days off at the end of next year, is my understanding of the calendar that was passed. I don't understand, I guess, why this language couldn't potentially be looked at either as like not a sunset, but like a.
Starting in the future.
Thank you, yeah. Like an in effect on this year, whatever language, or potentially just look at removing those days that we already are potentially looking at removing at the end of the year right now, if we don't use our inclement weather days. I mean, I feel like right now is more notice than we give them when we don't use inclement weather days.
And as someone who plans summer school, it's really difficult to figure out when the start date can be, when you don't know when the end of the school year is. So
As someone who also plans summer programs, I understand what you're saying. I will tell you, I believe that this next year's calendar, the end date does not interfere with the start of June for the start of summer programs. Even if we went 190 days. I just, at this time, we just printed the state of the district calendars. The calendar has been published. It is not easy to switch a calendar before the beginning of the year either, and to make those adjustments. So again, I'm going to go back to what Mr. Istern said. I think we're closer on this than it might seem, but this is something we would like for the academic calendar committee to discuss and propose as a collaborative option for the 27-28 school year.
I mean, but as a mandatorily negotiable topic, it would be in our purview to propose, which is what we did.
Right. And I'm saying we would like at this time to not move forward with Article 25 and to have the academic calendar committee look at it for the 27-28 and how we can adjust the entire calendar, not just the last 4 days in the future. Yeah.
Okay,
All right, and we also have a response on 43, 44.
We sat down and looked at Article 43 and 44 again, and agree that there needs to be conversation in regards to what this looks like. At this time, we are not willing to move forward with 43 or 44. However, throughout the meetings, the monthly meetings that are had, as well as morale committee, we think that that would be an excellent topic to take a look at throughout this next calendar year. To have a real conversation about what works for all of the staff. So at this time, we are not going to move forward with 43 or 44.
I would like to add that our counter proposal
Mhm.
of doing the conversion would still be on the table.
yeah, I think, I mean, I'll just say, I haven't had a chance to talk to my team about it because we just said the same thing, but I think for me, the primary concern honestly is that we removed language and there's nothing in there that says then that language at the end of that sunsetting program would revert back into the contract. It's just gone.
Okay, would you
So-
like to do a counter that would include that?
I mean, I'll be really honest, I don't know the answer to that, because my jerk response to that is no. That's my knee jerk response, but I don't know, we'll have to talk and see how everybody else feels about it.
I have legitimate concerns about taking topics that are negotiable items and putting them not at the negotiations table. That's a really slippery slope to keep pushing it on to a small group of people that aren't at the table, that it's not public knowledge about those discussions. That's what this body is for, is to have those discussions, to get the input that we need. To sit here and talk about, here's a problem, can we brainstorm solutions together? That's not meant for the monthly NEA, Topeka and superintendent meeting. It's not meant for a sub-council to be doing. It's that I have legitimate concerns about continuing to push things off to an outside entity that's not the negotiations table for everyone to hear and be involved in that process.
I'll tell you that we've had success with that. While most of these members that are sitting at the tables currently have been on the teams. We worked, and I think we scheduled to meet 5 times over the course of the year as a subcommittee. We noticed it the following year, easily exchanged it at the table without much discussion the following year. So we have had success with doing that in the past. And I think Brenda would agree that that was a successful endeavor.
I mean, I don't, yes, I don't disagree in that one instance that it was successful. I also have concerns as the person at the table who also then sits on a lot of those committees and those other meetings. That then I also put a lot of hours and time and work into developing things to bring to the table here, and now I'm a little frustrated that I'm being told, okay, well, we can have all of these other meetings and things during the year and talk about them and then potentially bring them back. But here I am, ready to have the conversations and do the polling and the work and all the things now. I've blocked that time out to do it, and we're not doing it. I guess that's my,
Article 43 is a big change, what you've proposed, and I think it needs the time to vet through what the unintended consequences of that will be, what the potential costs will be, and have more dialogue than we can necessarily have at negotiations on one item to that depth, where we're all looking at it together. So while our response could just be, this isn't something that we're able to do, so we're countering it, keep it the same, and we move on. We really are trying to keep that dialogue open with you on that item and see what we could do. We've presented a counter to you that we believe would help incentivize attendance and give extra flexibility with the 2 additional personal days that could be earned and used as you need to. That feels like from our side, an effort and good faith to meet you in the middle on this. So if there's a counter that you've got to language that we've got in there, some wording challenges that you see that we need to look at, we're happy to look at another counter, but we're trying our best here to meet you.
I just want to clarify, because nobody else except for the 11 of us sitting at the table have the language in front of them. I want to be very specific that I don't believe this to be a large change. So 3 consecutive days, I went from 6 days in a school year to 8 days in a school year. So there's probably in your defense, probably the largest change. 2 days on professional development days, 2 days that are disallowed for personal, like that's your own language. I just simplified it into here's one list of the things that would require you to have a note from a healthcare provider, and then expanded the use of what you can use those for instead of defining what an immediate family member is for everyone. So I just want to clarify for everybody that's not looking at the language that you keep saying this is a large change, but like really, it removed a lot of words that were just the same words over and over and over again. I just made it smaller and easier to read. It doesn't actually really expand the leave hardly at all, frankly. So I just want to make sure that everybody who's watching that can't see it understands what exactly it is that we're talking about. So
I also think it's fair to point out that the proposal that you've provided, if you do not currently qualify for that, you will not qualify for it in the future the way the language is. What you provided us, if you don't already qualify based on the number of days you took last year and how many you have in your leave bank right now, personally, the way it's written, there is no incentive next year to show up to work to get those future days. So it does not seem like this big incentive to us, because it's the way it's written. You either qualify now or you don't.
That might be a misconception on the language that we've proposed. What we're proposing is that you would have the 26-27 school year to, based on attendance, then qualify at the end of 26-27 for that rollover incentive into the 27-28 school year.
Yes and no. There's a small group that would meet the qualifications. But the majority of people, if they don't have those days banked right now, next year's days aren't gonna help them.
I mean, just to be transparent, we are trying to incentivize attendance. So yes, we did factor that in when we created that language.
Okay. We'll have to talk about it.
Would you like to caucus at this point?
I mean, I think we would. Do you guys have a compensation counter yet available? Like, there's only 3 more things on the table that I can tell that we haven't discussed, so. I mean, for us, it would make the most use of our time if we just went ahead and discussed all 3 and then we could caucus about everything.
I'm wondering, did you have something else that you were wanting to pass?
Not right at this second, no? Did I miscount? I'm sorry. Yeah, this is good, so it's 2. I think that is, I think it's 2. Yeah.
Our preference would be to caucus, and discuss the things that are currently on the table.
Okay. What time would you like to come back?
Um. 10:15?
Okay,
Can I ask just really quickly? Are we hopeful that you'll have a compensation offer for us when we come back to the table at 10:15?
Potentially. You ready? We were able to discuss our Appendix B proposal and your counter offer of adding all of the rubrics. Our preference at this time would be to pull our Appendix B proposal. That we do not have a desire to add all of those to the agreement. And Ms. Wallace has been working this morning to get all of those updated.
Those were, when we shifted websites, I think I shared this before, those links didn't get sent, so we have downloaded them from Talent Ed. Had to break the PDFs and are reformatting them, so they're being linked one by one as we go to.
so I just want to clarify then, the language in all of these extraneous. For media specialists, instructional coaches, blah, 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 blah. That language then in their evaluation, their summative will all be updated then to reflect the current model that's in appendix B.
I was working on the rubric. Yes, I think we want to update all of those.
Okay, because right now it doesn't look like it. Like if I look at, like, just pull a random one and go to the, what's in our appendix B versus what's on their page, it's not the same.
We'll get the current ones up and then we'll go back. Revising them will be a process, probably pulling a small group of people together to update each of them.
Okay. Okay,
We generally include, like when we created these separate rubrics, we included, it's the media specialist, we've included a few media specialists in the creation of the rubric, so we'll include them in the revision of the rubrics.
okay. Any other questions, Ian, about that? Okay.
Did you have an updated counter proposal on 43, 44?
No, we don't have enough. I mean, we feel like this language is not, it's not fiscally burdensome. So we don't really know how else to change the language and still achieve what we feel like we heard from the bargaining unit was what they wanted. We feel like we've reverted back as much as we could and still fall within the parameters of what we feel like we were told they wanted. So we don't have a counter to that.
Okay. Any response on 31 counselors?
Our understanding on the counselors one is that that would encompass. My understanding is that counselors now, their degrees require 60 hours of the graduate and college courses. So they're the ones who wrote the language for me, so we just weren't sure what the concern was, I guess, because they feel like this encompasses everything.
Okay.
And I mean,
We
I'm not,
don't currently have any staff that have that license.
have
It
the,
takes clinical hours, supervised clinical hours beyond just completing the master, so that's why.
you mean the
I wanted to
LCPC?
confirm. Correct.
Right, yeah, I don't, I mean, I can't speak for whether someone has that license yet or not. My understanding is that the amount of work that they have to do in order to obtain the LCPC is comparable to the LSCSW, which is why they want that moved to the same column as the LSCSW, but then the 60 hours of graduate credit moving to specialist mirrors then everybody else that's up there already. The social workers, SLPs, OTs, psychs, and yeah.
Okay, we'll have to have more conversation around that.
Okay,
I just wanted to be sure before we move forward with that. Any other counter proposals?
I don't think that we have counter proposals so much as I think, generally speaking, our team is a little disappointed in feeling like we put in a lot of time and a lot of energy and a lot of work into developing our notice letter and then our proposals every year, and then doing the legwork to make sure that those things meet so many requirements in between the original proposal and what we finally land on, and to be told over and over and over again that those are conversations that need to happen outside of this table. It's disappointing. And I have a concern about the language currently in the calendar committee appendix. I don't think that you can create a calendar that does not have the requisite number of days, because it says that it cannot exclude the mandatory topics. And if you change the days, number of days on the calendar in the duty year, that would be a mandatory topic that's being changed in the parameters.
I was suggesting that we create a 190-day calendar that has the flexibility within it for it to be easily shifted before calendars are printed and the year is getting ready to start. Not that we would create a calendar that has fewer days, just that has some flexibility to be more easily revised.
Right, I just am concerned that given the language that's currently in the appendix, I don't know that you guys should be having that conversation, I guess is what I'm saying,
Okay,
at the committee. Because it is a mandatory negotiable topic, we should be having that conversation here.
okay. They don't
Well,
have
and
to have
I
that.
think that our understanding was that that would be noticed for next year, but the conversations have to start happening before we would come to the table.
Then why can't we start that conversation now and put language in there that for the 27-28 school year, there won't be 190 days? Because then it would be following the contract to allow the calendar committee to have those discussions and explore that. I don't understand, like, I legitimately, looking at the current calendar, don't understand how that doesn't already afford us to have this conversation in delayed days. Like, I don't understand. I hear what you're saying. I don't understand how the calendar will look any different than it does currently to do exactly what we're asking for.
And I don't think we do until we sit down, welcome to join the calendar committee. It's not necessarily an easy calendar to come up with. There's usually multiple options, but within those options, there are some parameters that we have to follow. They make it a little bit more difficult.
I've been on calendar committees before, just because it hasn't been at 501, doesn't mean I don't have that experience. I understand what goes into creating a calendar. I also, as somebody who sat at the new staff meeting when it was presented by Dr. Anderson as a surprise, I've made this decision, we're gonna let you out early this year. I don't think it's that challenging. I think we have the tools here at the table to start those conversations. Especially if we want to make it not for the 26-27 school year, but the 27-28.
We have a salary schedule and insurance proposals prepared and ready to go. Those are based upon a 190-day contract. So we're ready to pass those at this time, but please keep in mind it's based on 190 days. We might have to.
I only have 5 people, so if you printed 6, there should be 5. Delegate.
Yeah, that will be the simpler one to explain quickly. We were not far apart from the amounts that you had proposed in Article 38. We just updated our counter proposal on that one to, with the latest numbers that we have, now that we're ready to go into open enrollment for insurance. The amount change, in there is, 652.34 will be the district's contribution for the single D health plan for the 26-27 school year. And we just updated that throughout here for what the employee only amount of contribution is for the other plans A through C as well. So it follows, I believe, mostly the changes that you had put in there, but if there's any questions, address them.
Okay,
Good on that one?
Yep.
All right, moving to the salary schedule, we began with some of the framework that you had put in with yours. And then applied the budget parameters that we're going into, which is here. We were fortunate before Mr. Mickey left to be able to have his report on the budget and outlook for next year. So with those things in mind, our counter does change the percentages proposed somewhat. We apply the same percentage to every step of the scale as your side had proposed. We do think that that more fairly compensates all levels and all columns of the scale. So we're in agreement with that. The amount that we were able to put towards the base came out to 2.315%. That's an oddly specific number, I'm sure you noticed. But the goal of that with step movement was that it got it so that no person moving on the scale for next year would receive less than a 3% total increase, which we believe both fits our budget and is fair and equitable for what we will be able to do for other employee groups. We did also address adding another step to the bottom of the scale, step AA for the 26th year. While we can't go straight to 30 steps and give multiple step movement, adding this step ensures that no one would receive no step movement this year. Everyone would be able to move forward. And budget permitting, hopefully we may be able to continue that in the future. Unless they are in the gray, so apologize. Those gray columns, just in the bachelor's degree columns, that did not affect them. Free to take any questions or let you review that. It's a group if you'd like.
I think one of the things that when we put the 30 years was because in the contract, we do mention 30-year employees. But we don't have a 30-year employee salary schedule. And I just think that's wrong that we don't have both. Why not? Why is it just coming in 2026, 27? that we're trying to get those employees that have been here more than 30 years and have worked a contract for more than 30 years, the compensation they deserve.
I can't speak for what previous contracts were agreed upon between both sides, but I know that we are wanting to do something. It's a step. In a
And I see the, and appreciate that. But it also doesn't alleviate that we have 30 years written in our contract for some
Sick leave, retirement pay.
retirement benefits. For paying out for our sick leave. So, I mean, if you mention it. And you're trying to sell it to an employee. Hey, at 30 years, you get this, but we can't tell you what you're gonna make when you're 30 years because we don't have a compensation for that.
And that is something that we worked to address 2 years ago, I believe, when we looked at Article 35 and the longevity. If you look at that, it goes to 40+ years because we know that we have employees that have been with us for a long time, and to show appreciation, we significantly increased those longevity amounts, which do apply to those folks. So it is an effort by moving to 26, but financially, we always come with the proposal that we feel like we can afford and ratify.
You know, we ran many scenarios on this, and we didn't want to bring you something that would add those steps, but then we have to give less to the base as a result. If we want to help the most number of people that we can with this, with the limited resources that we have.
So what is your calculated total cost for this proposal? Because we gave you our total cost.
And we do have that, and we can bring it back to you after our next conference.
I mean, we take into account employees who have resigned or retired, add in the new folks. We look at where every single person falls. So we do calculate that, obviously, to know that we can afford it.
Yeah, just a call back to the budget presentation that Inky was able to give us last time that we met. You know, the key things that we've got to remember is although the state is giving us roughly 3% additional to the base state aid per pupil. This next year, we're reducing 275 FTE equivalent for student count. So it erases almost all of the additional base state aid that we've received. So we are funding raises with cuts in other areas. Or, I mean, other really tough choices. So we've brought you what we feel like is the most that we can fit within this. And we feel like 3%, if we're able to do that as a minimum in this, that is more than or right at the CPI increase. So we're trying to keep that in mind, that we're trying to keep the consumer price index or inflation in mind as well.
And also switching to 3% across the board, or applying that 2.3% to each cell, is also rewarding the staff that has been with us the longest. And aligns with the other employee groups and how their raises will be done as well.
Any other questions? Okay, I don't think we have any questions. Other than that, total cost, we have it.
So would you like to caucus at this point? I think that we'll have those language cleanup items ready after lunch as well.
Yeah, so you wanna caucus and then go to lunch? So this. 10:40. What time do you wanna come back?
12:30,
Okay,
does that work for everybody?
okay.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
We have an updated language cleanup for you.
Okay,
All of the page breaks or whatever. She's like, I really can't do that until.
that's fine.
And then we changed the principal to the maintenance trainer.
Okay.
So, yeah. The second page. Hold on, let me do this. We have a little cleaner version of your Article 31 regarding the counselors. To just, I think, more easily include the counselors into the current language that's already there. There's a list of school social work, speech pathology, school psychology, occupational therapy, physical therapy, or school counseling. And then where it says LSCSW or licensed clinical professional counselor, LCPC. And then we also included further down in the article under B, additional hours. In that last paragraph, to qualify for placement on the 9th column of Appendix A, the professional employee must have secured a doctorate or hold a current LCPC or the LSCSW. Versus kind of having it separated down the block.
Okay. It's also just so you know, it's my understanding that we might not be aware if someone has an LCPC simply because that would be separate from their school counseling license, so they wouldn't necessarily provide that to you now because it doesn't benefit them in the school to do that. Does that make sense? So like right now, if a counselor had their LCPC, they wouldn't necessarily give it to HR because right now it doesn't benefit them to have that with the school district. You guys would just have a copy of their school counseling license.
Understood.
So you might have a couple. My understanding is there might be like 2 people who have it. You guys just aren't aware of that yet. Because it
Well, we
doesn't
looked it
benefit
up.
them to give it to you right now.
We looked it up for
Okay.
who our current staff was.
Any questions? And I just want to clarify too, because I will have to ask, do we know that just because of the way it's written? At the end of the part B on the last page. It says through the Kansas Behavioral Sciences Regulatory Board.
It's the same.
Is it, okay, but we are applying that to the LCPC also, right?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
William.
Okay, do we have, the number I requested on the total cost for your salary proposal?
Yes. So, this is just the adjustment to the base and the step movement for all employees, and we have done our best to make estimates based on when staffing is pulled to include new employees and those who have left. We came to for salary, $1,775,718. And the health insurance increase for Article 38, that kind of goes hand in hand, was $2,205,960. Or just under 4 million total.
Thank you. Along with. Sorry, new papers here. For the insurance. Just to clarify, I know the current language has always only had that Plan D single amount of what the district will cover, so that 652. Are you intending to continue the tiered process of employee child would be a little bit more, employee spouse a little bit more, and family, the district would cover more?
We made no other changes. Those are the numbers that we edited in Article 38 are the only change.
So,
But it's not specific in the,
So like if a person has Plan B family, would theirs be the same 650, whatever? I lost the number.
52.
Thank you.
It's
$52, or does it continue on the tiered system that's currently in place? Like it would be slightly more.
it's like previously it was 600, 650, 660, and then 700. Are you planning to continue that process of an adjusted amount? Do you have those dollars?
Just 1 minute.
Thanks for bearing with us. We just, since these numbers weren't in the what was passed, we just weren't prepared. Apologies, I spoke earlier, so the adjustment did follow the others, and that brought the employee plus children contribution to 702.
Like for a plan A, for
Yeah.
instance.
Well, they were all tiered the same. It didn't matter if you had A, B, C, or D, so.
And then employee plus spouse brought it to 712. And family to 752.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
Which also just to clarify, while we have this pulled up, that has the district paying 77% and the employee paying 23%, like overall. For health insurance for all employees.
Does your total number, back to your health insurance number, you said just a little over $2.2 million. Does that include your payment of the increase on Plan D? I assume that's all encompassing?
Yes.
Okay, do you know what that is without the Plan D information?
Learn all of Plan B, not just employee.
Yeah, like exclude Plan D from that, cause like we didn't agree to cover to a catastrophic plan the district did, so like when we did our number of increase, we didn't factor Plan D into it because I didn't agree to that. From the bargaining unit, that was done through other negotiations with the district and the health insurance company.
On Plan D only, which has 652 employees on it. And the increase in our contribution is $44,994 per month, or $539,934 per year of that increase.
Okay. Any other questions?
I guess, I'm assuming you have some spreadsheets open, as do I. So far, numbers have matched kind of what we were anticipating. To make sure that I'm doing this correctly with those proposed increases for the board to pay, and then what the total cost is increasing. The smallest increase that an employee on Plan C employee only, the smallest yearly increase that they would see would be $1,738. And we have 880 employees on that plan. And then it just continues to jump substantially from there, like Plan B employee only, $2,876 a year. Increase from what they currently pay, and Plan A employee only $5,733 per year. Do you have that math? Are those matching somewhat some of those calculations you've done?
Could you try out just one more time?
So I took, like, looking at Plan C employee only, the monthly increase that they would see from what they currently pay. We are projecting a $1,738 increase to their premiums that they would be paying, even with that $652 from the board. They would still be paying $1,738 out of pocket per year. Yes, per year. At the lowest rate.
On Plan C, employee only, the employee portion would be $144 a month. It was $112.50 per month. $31.50 a month increase, times 12 months, I've got $378.
Okay, yeah, so mine was the total cost of that. If I stated that wrong. The increase is not 17, but their total cost would be 1738 compared to what it was last year. Yes, okay. Thank you for confirming that.
Brenda, are you all thinking you would like some additional caucus time? Or what are you thinking?
All right, we have some questions just related to the overall district budget, if that's possible. I am looking at the budget form that we have access to. It's rather lengthy. It's like 80 pages. But we just like noticed when we were going through the budget as a group that there are random line items that are labeled as like other or other happens a lot, or let's see, transfers. We don't know where those transfers are coming from or where they came from or why they ended up where they got. Where large amounts of money are like changing between years which I can understand would be normal. But sometimes there's line items that change by millions of dollars from virtually nothing. There's other line items that say other purchase services. For example, this one grew from 14,000 to 75,000 in the course of the year. Why? What do we need that for? Why is it sitting there? Why do we have so much unencumbered cash that we're not doing anything with? Where are we hiding that? I think it's just a lot of follow-up questions. Cause like we hear that like, this is the offer, this is what you have to give, but we look at the budget and we see it. And so we're just curious, like how some of these decisions are made, why they're moved to other, what is other, where is it coming from? Why are some of these jumps double or more? Like, I think we're just curious.
I can take that one. So, let me address transfers first. So in school finance, most of your funding flows into the general fund and then is transferred out to other funds. So think of it like it goes into one bank account and then you have to split it up into your other accounts to be spent. Your legislature does this because they want to make it look on paper like you've got more money than you do. Because you record revenue both when it goes into the general fund and when it's received into those other funds because of the transfer. So on your budget form, if you're looking at the code 99, you're gonna see a number at the bottom that is your total budget with and without transfers. That's one. We were able to get that in to help be more transparent to the public because it's confusing, obviously. When it comes to items that may be coded as other, so you're talking about the portion of a budget code in school finance called the object code. That's what tells in state reporting what the purchase is, where all the other parts of the budget code mean other things. There are hundreds of those, and they really get down into a lot of detail. I mean, supplies is different than paper in those codes. And we do our best to code things so that it is clear for the public when they look at it, but also knowing that things can change between those two. So if mid-year we decide that we need to spend more on books than we did on copying paper, for example, that kind of transfer gets made routinely. But we do our best to estimate based on prior year expenses what those should start out as for the state budget document. Ones that are marked other are things that just don't have an object code for them. So even though there are hundreds, there are going to be expenses that just don't neatly fit into one of those boxes already. That's a pretty limited list, but you're talking about things like the transfers, for example, are kind of in other category. And I'd have to really get into some specifics to show you. I'd have to.
I would have mentioned like lines and stuff, but I know you probably don't have it like readily available,
Yeah.
so yeah.
And what can happen between years that could cause one line to go up and another line to go down? Just like I talked about with transfers throughout the year, if we decide we need to spend more on books than paper. The next year, we're going to use that information when building that budget again, those prior year expenses, and build our starting point budget based on that. So you're getting a more accurate picture based on what your prior year experience was. There are also times where things are just identified through the budget process that really they fit better in a different line. Either the object code needs to change or the function code needs to change to just more accurately reflect what that expense is for state reporting. So it gets complicated, and I'd be happy to go through more examples if anybody who's interested, but really it has to do with all of those account codes being used for state reporting because they want to be able to show in their data archives how we spend every dollar. And we do the best that we can to make sure that when we're putting in a PO, we're using the full budget code that matches what that expense is.
Thank you.
Hopefully I hit all the parts of that question if I missed anything.
Do you know how much you spent on certified salaries in the 25-26 school year?
I think we might have that handy. Before we throw out a number and it not be correct, why don't we bring that number to you after the next time we're all conference? I know we're just looking at that, so we've got something that's probably close, but I just would rather be sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So the health insurance number, the little over 2.2 million, is that all employees or is that number just certified employees?
That is plan wide. We didn't have it split out between bargaining groups, just the insurance plan, because everyone pays the same amounts. We just didn't have that handy, but I'm sure we could get it.
But when we're looking at our numbers, we're only looking at numbers that impact certified for our bargaining unit. So that number is higher than our number.
Yeah, I think it illustrates just the different things that both sides of this table are looking at, right? Because we know that we have to pay for that insurance increase for all staff, not just your bargaining units.
And
But
we
I can
have to
absolutely-
do our due diligence to make sure we're doing our part.
We can get that. Right.
Right, but I also just want to say, this is why when we ask for information and are told that that information isn't relevant to bargaining, that's why that's frustrating. Because then when I come to the table and I'm given a health insurance proposal, it includes everyone, including administrators and classified staff who aren't in my bargaining unit, but I don't need that information apparently to make my proposal and come up with numbers. So I just want to point that out, that like when we ask for that information, but then we're given a number that includes those people, that's why that's frustrating. It's because I'm told that's not relevant to bargaining with me, but apparently it is, because here it is on a piece of paper in my bargaining.
I think I said we would get that for you, not that this wasn't relevant, but I don't recall your proposal that you passed on insurance, but how far were we apart on the amount that are we talking about a few dollars here?
I think we did 670. Yeah, I think initially. Oh, yeah, we were still.
So I just wanted to point out that we didn't come back with something that was really far apart there. We really were really close to your number, and this is just what the final came in at.
While we're, sorry, while we're talking budget questions. It is my understanding that in a budget, you have to budget for every certified position that's currently available. I think that's the right word to use, like every certified position that is available to be filled with a certified person has to be budgeted for. Is that correct?
I think you've got two different budget methodologies that you could look at there. One that is commonly used would be based on actual expenses and average teacher salaries, because we don't know a new hire what they're gonna come in at exactly, so there is commonly estimates used in many of those places. We also, I wouldn't say that there's just an open position that is unfilled for years and it just sits there as unspent. If that's maybe where we're going with this, that is not the case, because that money usually then gets spent on either a long-term sub to fill that position or something else to as a workaround to that position not being filled. So I don't know if I can give you an exact answer without an exact scenario, but.
Well, then can you explain how 501 currently does budget certified salaries? Cause I know there's a lot of different lines depending on special ed, title funds, like there's different places that money can come from. So what's the current method for budgeting for those right now?
Yeah, we've got the head count that we pull from the system, so we know what our actual positions are. We then removed those who retired at the end of the year. We added in new hires, and that gives us basically the same salary scale that you all are looking at. But it tells us how many people are on each cell in that step. Then we use that to calculate what the increase is for the salary and step movement as a whole for the entire bargaining unit. You are right if you're saying that the funding for that comes from several different buckets, because that's true. Sped funding would come from the sped fund. We would have Title I teachers paid from Title I. But this gives us the total dollar amount, but that's actually kind of points out another thing that we have to do on the back end. We have to set aside extra out of general fund for raises in many cases, even though we're not getting much of an increase there. Because we're not getting additional special education funding. We're not getting additional Title I funding. But we still have to pay for raises out there. So it is kind of a balancing act between all of the funds. So we tend to look at the budget more as a whole instead of per fund at this stage. When we meet with those department directors and we're working out their budget allocation with them, we certainly are looking at the exact number of staff paid for their fund. Thank you.
So we have, so I just want, what I heard you say when we did, your salary schedule is you said with the step increase, it would equal out to be the 3%. That's why the $511.57 thing is such a caution, right?
Overall, it might be more than that because some would receive more, but no one who's not in the gray received less than 3%.
So we went and just mocked up a counter proposal to that. So we tried to kind of find middle ground between what we proposed and what you guys proposed that we felt like. So this is just a 3% across the board. You guys were at 2.315. We were at 3.96. So we went back and put together a 3% across the board raise on each cell. So that's what Danica has passed out to you. Will you give them that business? With that, we went back to Article 25. We are trying really hard to find something that we feel like is ratifiable, because what we're hearing from people is that your proposal wouldn't be. So we then lowered the number of days off, like that we're taking off, the number. So instead of 186, we went to 188, which is 2 days off the 190. Because the way we kind of look at that is that is not money in people's pocket, but it's time back. So it's a little bit a part of we consider that to be kind of a part of their compensation package. And so we tried to even out what we were asking for between those two things, between the 3% and then the 2 days off of the total number of days. And then while we were having that discussion, I just want to speak a little bit to like what Billy said about planning and things for the calendar for the next year and stuff. And I just want to be clear that like I think a lot of the conversation that we had around the 4 days off had to do with the end of the year, just to simplify things. But I just want to be really clear that like we don't have a say in when those days, like those 2 days would be taken off. So if there's like a day in the middle of the year that people are gone a lot, if that's a day that would be whatever, we just want to be clear that like we weren't actually asking to lose 4 days from the end of the calendar. So it might be that the end of the school year date doesn't change, that 2 of those days are taken from somewhere else in the calendar. So I just wanted to be clear that we weren't trying to dictate where those days are coming from. We were just For simple reasons, we were trying to make it easy to look at and be like, well, it'd be like these 4 days we already take off at the end of the year go away. But you guys could do that, however.
Any questions?
Do you happen to have the exact percentage that you added to the base, because we'll plug that into our models?
It's just 3%.
For you,
Yeah, the dollar amount on the base. 1515. Would be what the flat dollar would be on the base.
thank you.
What are you thinking as far as things like?
I mean, I don't think that we have nearly as much probably to discuss and do math on, to you guys. This time, I mean, so we'd be okay with 2 o'clock, which is 38 minutes from now, but I don't know if you guys need more time than that.
Yeah, some of these items may take a little bit longer, and I did kind of want to plant the seed that Article 38 on the benefits. Our benefits broker is trying to get things put together to start sending out and that way for open enrollment for benefits. So if there's any possibility that we can get to a TA on that sooner rather than later, that would make things better for everyone, but understand there may be no conversation on those things.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I don't think it's any secret that as far as the bargaining unit is kind of concerned, I think those kind of make up a total compensation package. When you start talking about coverage of health insurance and all the things, so.
Were you able to review the Article 31 regarding the counselors?
Yes, I think we are fine with that to TA that.
But I have a thing. Take a look at what the future says.
Okay, at the bottom, right, sorry.
Okay, we have responses to your Article 25 and salary schedule.
Okay. So, we are not interested in adjusting the calendar for the 26-27 school year. We, would be willing to discuss it during the calendar committee. We would be willing to create two possible calendars and then approve one, with the understanding that if something should change, that we have a calendar ready to go that has adjusted the number of duty days. We had discussed the possibility of waiting until, you know, as early as or as late as May. So that it could be noticed in the letter and then we could start meeting about it immediately. I do think that that creates a hardship for teachers and families, knowing when the school year is going to start and end for the following year.
I've got numbers that were requested for the health insurance increase, so glad I had a little time to go back and look at that a little bit closer. Because I may have misspoke earlier. So to clarify, when I look at just the bargaining unit and the increase amount for both Plan D employee only and the contribution for all other plans, I'm at $837,399 for just working. So that puts that with our proposal for salary at 2.613 million additional. And in response on Appendix A, which is the salary scale, the district's position is that we came to the table with the maximum that we could bring to you in our counter. And that we unfortunately can't agree to the latest counter.
Can I ask a question? Can you see how that might seem like that you came unwilling to negotiate? If that's the set amount, and if you're telling us that that's the set amount, could you see how that might look like to people on the outside? That it's not a collaborative process for like salary negotiations, it's you telling us what it is and making us accept that.
I think anybody can take it any way that they individually want to. I think that it would. It's just not the way that I would take it. You passed us your response or your proposal. We came with a counter based on the numbers that we have, looking at the budget as a whole, district wide. We didn't lowball you out of the gate, so that there would be back and forth. We brought you the best proposal that we think is fair and equitable to all employee groups that we have to provide increases for. And we put that on the table.
I understand. That does not sound like you want to negotiate, honestly, because if that's just the amount, then you're saying that that's the amount, and we could pass umpteen number of things, and you would still be like, but this is the amount. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I'm just, from my point of view, and I think many others, I don't want to assume, but it definitely just sounds like we're being told that that's the amount. And that we can't do anything about that. So, and that just doesn't sound like negotiating anything. That sounds like an arbitrary amount that we're being told that we have to back. And I just don't, I don't like that. I don't really have anything else to say other than that. I'm not a fan of that.
The budget is finite.
I understand,
Not infinite.
But we're at the negotiations table though, and so when you say that this is the amount and that's what it is, it doesn't sound like it's negotiable, which is the idea of this meeting, so.
Well, because I think philosophically, we want to put on the table what is true and accurate versus us spending time giving you a proposal that's 1.5 or 2% when we know that the budget is 3%. That is not good use of anyone's time. And it's not something that we have traditionally done. We feel like the amount of presenting that is the most respectful way to do that versus playing a game of adding percents here and there.
We just did some math, and I'm not good at math, but everybody knows this. But when we were looking at the math, the amount of money that insurance goes up, we all know it. The amount of money you're giving us, and then break that down into 24 paychecks is, for some people, gonna be less than $70 for their paycheck that they're seeing an increase to. And that's just really hard when people are doing the math for us to say, that's the best the district can do.
Additionally, the feedback that we got from the bargaining unit, even on this amount, is like, we know that we can't take this. We know that they won't pass this. So I think we also, like on our side of the table, and you have a responsibility to present something to the unit, as you said, that will pass, and they're not gonna vote for that. And they've said that. So.
We brought you the most attractive proposal that we can. To others' points, the resources are finite, and if we're gonna point fingers at anyone, it's really a numbers thing. We're losing 275 FTE. So there is not additional general fund money like there is in years past. And with the other issues that we're dealing with sped funding, federal funding cuts being proposed, definitely not increases in those additional funds. We have to have the money in order to give you a proposal that includes it. And we would be right out there with you in advocating with the legislature for school funding.
Right, which, I mean, sounds really nice and happy and pretty, and of course, we are advocating with the legislature to fully fund special ed and increase the formula and all of the things, just like I'm sure you guys are, but then we don't leverage our full LOB authority, so I mean, for us, right, like that comes off like this is the best we can do, because I mean, money is a finite resource, agreed, but we aren't leveraging everything we could be leveraging in order to have a little bit more of that finite resource. And we haven't leveraged everything we could for a long time, and we're well below the state average, so. I mean. Danica's not wrong in what she's saying, like what we're hearing from people is that this isn't gonna do it for them. So we're just trying to be honest about what is being communicated to us. I mean, that's our job, so.
It's also really hard to hear money is a finite resource when we have brought multiple proposals to the table that don't cost a penny, and we were told no, 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 no. We had many conversations that we are aware of the money situation in the state and the district. And we tried to bring things that didn't cost money to improve the overall contract to make it better for people to say, okay, I didn't get the $2,000 I really need, but there are other things that make my day-to-day teaching job better. I can give a little to take a little, and we're not getting anything.
Well, that's not accurate, because we have TA'd items that you put on the table.
And you've denied several, I mean,
True, also
so,
true.
I mean,
So to say we're not getting anything, though, is not accurate.
But when we notice, like, how many items did we notice Sam, this year?
well, over 10.
Well over 10, and you've agreed to what, 3? Maybe, that's 30%, less than half of what we're noticing, so more than half of what we're noticing, you're just saying flat out no to, including not negotiating on compensation.
And we have asked counter proposals, so it hasn't been a flat out no on all of those.
Well, on the middle school coaches, that was a no to committee. On sick leave, that was a no to committee unless we did what you wanted. On A25 on the calendar day, that was a no to committee, we countered, and that was a no again. So just for everybody, like there have been many a no today, and there are more no's than yeses.
I think it's probably best at this point if we just take a break for the rest of the day and come back tomorrow morning. I think, if you can't tell, I think we are a little frustrated. And I just don't think that staying here probably is gonna be beneficial in anybody's time, for us or for you guys. So I think we would like to be done until 9 tomorrow morning, if that's acceptable to you guys.
Sounds good.
Okay, we will see you then. Thank you.